Hello and welcome to this BCTV Open Studio, where we will be discussing a proposal coming before voters on March 3rd on instituting a mayoral form of governance in Brattleboro. My name is Olga Peters. I am a reporter with the Commons. I'm joined in the studio today with Kevin O'Connor, a reporter with Vermont Digger, and Chris Mays, a reporter with The Reformer. With us, we also have, with our discussion today, two co-sponsors of the proposal, Dick DeGray and Dan Yates. We're so glad you can be here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
So the first question we wanted to ask is for anyone who is new to this discussion, what is this proposal and what do they need to know to understand the question that will be before voters on March 3rd?
I think I'll start and then ask Dick to certainly fill in anything that I leave out. The idea behind this, Olga, is for a number of years I've had people talk about whether or not the town should consider a mayoral form of governance rather than continuing with the select board and town manager form of governance. And yet nothing has ever moved forward to have that question answered. So Dick and I and some others had discussions and felt, let's find out what the people of Brattleboro think about this. And let's try to make sure that they understand what it's about and let the voters decide whether or not this is something that should be pursued. So the idea would be, if passed and if the select board then forms or reconstitutes the charter committee to switch from select board, representative town meeting, and town manager to a mayor and whether it's a town council or a board of aldermen.
I just want to quickly read the language as it will appear on the ballot, and it reads, "Shall the voters of the town of Brattleboro advise the select board to amend the Brattleboro town charter to replace the select board with that of a mayoral form of governance," and then you check yes or no. And it seems, I was looking through some materials online, and it seems like this question has come up many times. I found some articles even from 2013 recently, in the recent history. And I'm wondering, Dick, what else do you think voters need to know about this question now, since it has been kind of percolating in the community for a while?
Well, one of the things we don't know is what the voters actually feel about changing its form of governance. It's never gone to a town-wide vote. And in the discussions that I had with Dan and a couple of other people sitting around the table, I know, because I have been a participant in the governance system that is existing as a select board member and a former chair, is that when the charter committee was convened back in, I think, 2007 or 2008, this was part of a discussion. But it wasn't a broad-based discussion to go out and let's do a vote as to find out if the town would like to change it. So the committee decided that this wasn't a direction that we wanted to go. And as I said before, sitting around with Dan and the other people at the table, I said, because this is such a cumbersome project, I want to know if the people in Brattleboro want us to explore this, and the best way to do that is have a town-wide vote. And if we find out that it's in the positive, then we move forward to go in front of the select board. If we find out that the question is defeated, then a lot of time and energy is saved by not moving forward with the question, and we stay status quo.
And just for clarity, this question is an advisory question. It's not, if we vote yes or no, it doesn't automatically put that form of governance in place. It would then still have to go through like a vetting process or something with the select board.
This is correct. It is a non-binding question. And as you alluded to a few minutes ago, you've done some homework in looking up where this question, have we talked about it before? I have been in favor of a mayoral system for many, many years. Have never moved on it until we got together and said, well, let's take this course of action. So this isn't new to me. And like Dan also said, I've had many people approach me through the years to say we should have a mayor. Well, you know, you can constitute 10 people sometimes seems like a couple hundred. So for me, the best way to find out if we want to change the form of government that we have is to take it right to the people and say, are you happy with this, or would you like to look at what another form of government would be, i.e. mayor?
And I think if I can mention, Olga, that for it not to be advisory, what you would actually have to do is redraft the town charter and present that proposed charter to the voters for it to become a binding article.
Kevin?
For people who might be curious about this but not quite understand why you're actually supporting this, what do you feel are the benefits to the community to pursue a mayor form of government?
Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. Kevin, thanks. That's a great question. As I look at it, and of course this is, you know, my own opinion and my own vision of what it might look like, is I would foresee a mayor who serves, you know, as a, shall we say, a strong mayor. That is somebody who is both the administrative and political head of the town, but who is also supported by a town council that is larger than the current select board. You know, we've had discussions about the possibility of redistricting, or a more simple approach would be we currently have 3 districts. You could have 3 members on the town council from each district, so ensuring equal representation for each of those districts. But a mayor would have the authority to run the town the way a CEO has the authority to run a company.
And I also look at it as accountability to the stakeholders. You know, for me, the select board, certainly there is accountability to the voters. We have an election every year, and the board potentially can turn over by 3 people. Well, I think in a mayoral system, you would have a vision for where the town wants to go, and I'm an advocate of a 3-year term versus 2 or 4. Right now, the town really doesn't have a vision. It has goals that the select board sets up yearly, but next year's board is certainly not compelled to follow this year's goal or any other policy that they have jurisdiction over. So that can change year to year, and I don't think that's good policy, so to speak, for the town. And again, accountability to the voters. I want to pick who's leading my community.
For both of you, in addition to what Dick just mentioned about the changeover that can happen from year to year and keeping a vision for the town, what do you feel is broken in Brattleboro's current democratic system that the mayoral form of governance could potentially fix?
I'll be honest with you, I don't, you know, I've heard people say if it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, maybe it's not broke to the person who said that, but there are other people who feel that they don't like the system that's in place and they would like to have a mayoral system. So it's not one versus, you know, it's not broke. Some people are saying, I don't like this and I would like to see this. So it doesn't make one right or wrong. And so that kind of argument goes away for me in terms of it ain't broke. Everybody has their opinion. A classic example is our existing president. Some people hate him and other people like him. So, I mean, that's what we have going on here in Brattleboro, and hate's too strong a word. But the reality is there are people that just don't like this system.
Right, and I'll just rephrase my question so I can fine-tune it a little bit. What specifically, what parts of our system are you hearing that people don't like?
Some of what I hear, Olga, is that the size of the select board, limiting the governance of this town to a 5-member select board doesn't provide broad enough representation for the town. Also, if you consider it from the perspective of if you were to have representation on a town council or select board, if it stayed that way, that ensured equitable representation from each of the 3 districts in the town, I think some people would feel more comfortable. Conceivably, you could have all 5 select board members from the same street. It's unlikely, certainly, and unrealistic to think so, but it's possible. So by districting your membership, then you're ensuring, at least to a greater degree, that you are representing the interests of all of the voters.
Chris?
So I hear you talking a little bit about the 3 districts. I'm wondering how you envision or what you envision happening to representative town meeting if we move to a mayoral system.
Well, town meeting would go away. I mean, you certainly could still have a town meeting, but they wouldn't have authority. And I mean, I want to make certain that people understand this isn't Dick DeGray or Dan Yates's form of government, because if this passes and goes before the select board, then a committee is formed to hash out all of the details. These are just ideas that Dan has and I have that I would be advocating for. I mean, I would be advocating for term limits for the mayor and also the council, something we don't presently have with the select board. So from the original question, town meeting would go away. And if you look at the history of town meeting the past several years, we've had extreme difficulty filling all the seats via the election process. And so people are going out and recruiting people to come in, and they're getting to be town meeting members via caucus. I don't believe that's the best way to have governance and representation at town meeting. And there are a lot of people that have spoken to me who are quite frustrated about town meeting and what happens at town meeting. So again, there are people who are happy about it and people who aren't happy about it. One's not right and one's not wrong. It's just the way you personally feel.
There may be some people who question why town meeting has to go away. Is that something under a mayor's form of government in terms of the state of Vermont or at the national level that you can have one or the other? Is that something in terms of it just doesn't work to have all of those components? Can you explain to people who might say, well, gee, why does it have to go away? Is it something that it just, the system would only work in a certain way, or is that a possibility to keep it?
Well, if I can touch on that, Kevin, 2 pieces of that, because we have representative town meeting, and then we have town meeting. And representative town meeting, a continuation of that under a town council and mayoral form of governance would be somewhat superfluous. What's their purpose? That's what the town council or board of aldermen, whatever you want to call it, and a mayor, that's their role. In terms of a public town meeting, I think certainly you could continue to have a town meeting, as was done before we had representative town meeting. But I certainly, and again, these are just my own opinions. There's no reason that you would not continue to have a public forum at bi-weekly or however often the town council meetings would be held. Therefore, ensuring that the voters have the opportunity to come and speak before the governing body.
Before I ask my question, I just want to clarify for listeners, a couple questions, terms have come up with the mayor, and I think Dan used one term called a strong mayor. You'll also sometimes hear the term a weak mayor. And just for the sake of listeners, that just determines how much power the mayor has in the structure of the government. So those are 2 terms you might hear in the discussion. One concern I have been hearing from folks in the community is that if we have a mayoral system of government, it would concentrate too much power in one person. Can you respond to that?
Well, in the present system that we have, you had advocacy when people are talking to select board members and trying to get things accomplished, things that are going to come before the board. And there's people that talk to the town manager. You know, there was something about transparency, that this stuff would all be behind closed doors. I don't see that as happening. You're still going to have 2 public meetings a month. That's what I would be advocating for, with the council, and the council having veto authority. Again, all this stuff to be discussed later on. And, you know, again, if people feel that that's happening, they have the authority to vote someone out of office. At the end of the day, the townspeople will decide whether the mayor is using his power inappropriately or appropriately, and vote accordingly.
And I think, Olga, with respect to that too, as Dick said, I had been looking at other town and city charters where there are mayors, and looked at Rutland, looked at Burlington. And Burlington uses a town council, Rutland uses a board of aldermen. But in either case, there is veto authority. Now, you know, the board can pass an ordinance, the mayor has the authority to veto that ordinance. That same board then, with a majority vote, would have the ability to override that veto. So it continues to provide checks and balances to ensure that nobody has so much power that, you know, they're just, this is my show and I'm running it.
From what I understand, if Brattleboro has a mayor, the town would become a city. Are there any special benefits to having a city as opposed to having a town?
I've been looking into that. I haven't got a complete answer for you, but I think there are potentially a few benefits with federal monies coming. Again, not sure of that, and actually I've called a couple of people and haven't heard back from them to try to get the full scope of giving you a complete answer on that.
And I would say that what I have read suggests that what defines a city is typically its population size or its importance. And I think, as people have heard me say in earlier discussions about this issue, that, you know, I think Brattleboro is an important town. We are the first town when you come into the state of Vermont. We have 3 interstate highway exits. We are the economic hub of Windham County, and perhaps stretching across county lines into other states as well, you know, as an employment center. And to Dick's comment about the need for a long-term vision, being an economic hub, an epicenter, plays a key role in creating that vision.
This is a 2-part question. Obviously, a lot of this is to be debated, but do you envision, if we go to a mayor system, needing some kind of sort of central administrator, sort of almost in effect serving as a town manager, so to speak, who sort of helps the mayor work with the rest of the government? And the second piece of the question is, and again, I know this is yet to be discussed, would a mayor receive a salary? And if so, and we also kept an administrator, would that create more cost in terms of how much we would be paying for municipal government?
Well, again, all depends how you feel about having a mayor, and Dan, I think, is just in favor of a mayor. I certainly would enjoy the conversation about do we have a town manager or some sort of administrator. As for the cost, I certainly see a mayor being paid. Most mayors are, and the research I've done, are paid a little bit less than a town manager. And then when you're talking about additional costs to the town, I mean, the board actually last year in their budget deliberations, in a discussion about an energy coordinator, decided that they didn't want to put that in as part of their budget. And the town manager was in favor of that, and 3 select board members were in favor of that. And yet at town meeting, the body felt compelled to add $100,000 to the budget to hire, which is now a sustainability coordinator. So when you're looking at spending money, the town fathers actually rejected during their budget proposal, and then town meeting said we want to spend this amount of money. So I don't want money to be the deterring factor. I mean, if it's prudent to have a town manager or an administrator, again, to be determined by the body that's put together, the Charter Review Committee that's put together, and having input from a group of people at the table. So,
And certainly from my perspective, I think a mayor without a town manager, not that there wouldn't be some type of assistant, much like Peter currently has Patrick Moreland as the assistant town manager, but you have to also think about, we have department heads that run each of the functional departments for the town. And so I'm not thinking about adding another layer and we continue to operate the way we are, and let's throw a mayor on top of that. The mayor, in my vision, is the person that runs the town.
So one follow-up to that, would the mayor, as a result, be the one who appoints the department heads? Or would that still be something that the town council or select board would be in charge of?
That ultimately would be decided in any charter revision. But it would seem to me that if we want a strong mayor, we would want that mayor to have the ability to do the hiring and, when necessary, the firing.
yeah, I don't see a change, a big change in the way that we're functioning. I don't think that the present town manager micromanages the department heads, and I don't think a mayor would be micromanaging the department heads either. Certainly he would be administrating them as to if there were problems to come up and talk to them about them. But I don't see wholesale changes every time that we would have a new election with a new mayor to say, okay, we're going to get a new public works director, or we're going to get a new police chief, any of those positions. So I don't see a turnover there. It's potentially could happen, but I don't see that happening. I think anybody you speak to speaks very highly of the department heads that we have in our community. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure something's perfectly clear here. I served a year under Peter Elwell as manager. I've actually talked to him personally about this and wanted to make sure that this is not directed at him, and want to be clear to everybody out there in the public that this has got nothing to do with Peter Elwell and or any other town manager that would be sitting there at this time. This is about just a different form of government and more accountability in my eyes.
And I would just simply say that I'd be thrilled if Peter Elwell was the next mayor, if that were to happen.
Chris?
Yeah, so if this passes, what exactly do you think will come next? Will you guys sort of be leading the charge? Will you try to be involved in the Charter Review Committee? And what kinds of items do you think that the Charter Review Committee will look at before making a recommendation?
Well, one of the things that you need to know is once you open up the charter for review, everything's open on the table. And certainly there are things in our charter that are no longer germane vis-a-vis the school. So the charter has some housekeeping issues to do. I would try to be part of a committee in terms of looking at what the governance would finally look like. So I would certainly put my name in the hat, and hopefully that the select board would choose me to sit on that committee. And this isn't something that, even if it passes, you're looking at probably a 2-year process, at least, because it still has to, after passing what we have to go through with our charter for amendments, it still has to go up to the legislature. What would give it a lot of credence is the voter turnout and how much it passes by. So that's a big issue here also.
And I certainly would welcome the opportunity to participate if that opportunity was presented to me. I've had this idea, fostered the question, and I care very deeply about this town. And if I can do something to be helpful, terrific. If they choose other people, so be it.
Just a clarification for anyone who's wondering why we don't have someone on the quote other side here. My understanding is that you are hoping to, in effect, find out whether the community is even interested in having the conversation before having the conversation. So this idea in terms of what we're doing here today is not to exclude anyone so much as to say, before we sort of do counterpoint, let's actually even have a conversation through the article to decide whether or not to put the time in to have the conversation. Am I correct in that?
Exactly. This was not meant to be a debate. This was simply meant to present, our thoughts. We've heard from a number of people that have sent letters to the newspaper, posted on Facebook, and we wanted an opportunity to share our thoughts and our vision. But you're exactly right, Kevin. I mean, the time for debate will come if and when the voters say yes to the article.
Yeah, people who are not involved in the day-to-day thoughts of what the governance is and what the charter is, I think they spent close to 3 years doing the charter review the last time they did it. And it's very time-consuming. And so as we were talking about this before, I was letting Dan and the other people at the table know how time-consuming this could be, and it might not bear any fruit, as I said earlier in this discussion. So we want to find out if there's support for it. And if there's support for it, then you move on down the road and you go. I'm not here to say who's ever writing letters is wrong in their opinion. If you like the form of government, that's great. And if we lose, I'm okay with what we have. But I would prefer to have a mayor. That's, at the end of the day, that's how I feel I would like to have a governance system. Doesn't make the people who are writing these letters right or wrong. That's how they feel. And I applaud them for defending what they feel strongly about. So it's not like you're wrong and I'm right. That's not it at all.
One question I think we always have with democracy is how do we make sure that as many people as possible can participate? At this point, and of course a lot of things have still yet to be decided, if at all, how do you feel this mayoral form of government would increase participation, and how do you feel it could limit participation in comparison to the form of government Brattleboro has now?
My own opinion, Olga, is that it increases participation because we are putting the question to almost 9,000 or a little over 9,000 registered voters in the town of Brattleboro. We're not leaving the question to a small group of people. So, and anybody that's watching this, I would say, March 3rd, vote. However you're going to vote on this issue, vote. So there's the opportunity to increase participation. And participation on an ongoing basis through the election of the mayor, through the election of members of the town council or board of aldermen, or whatever it ultimately is called. That's the opportunity for broader participation.
And one of the good things about this vote coming at this election is that it's the primary in Vermont. So the turnout we're hoping is going to be high, and we'll have a good indication as to, where people feel. And the other thing about participation is you, the voter, need to do some homework also on your own, as to say, well, I don't know a lot about the way the town operates now. I know that we have a select board and a town manager and town meeting, but I don't know a whole lot about that. So you need to do homework on both, and if it's something that, when you're saying, well, I like what we have, vote to keep what we have. You vote no. Mm-hmm. So it's what you personally feel. It's not what Dick DeGray is telling you he wants. You know, I don't want you to abdicate your responsibility with your vote to what I want. You need to do your homework and your research and say, yeah, I think I'd like that form of government.
Thank you very much, Dan and Dick today. We're just about out of time, but before we go, I want to make sure, do you have any more questions, Kevin? Chris, any more questions? Is there anything either of you would like to add or wish we had asked before we sign off today?
I think I would just like to add that, as I've read the opinions of others, which I very much respect, that are not in favor of this, make sure that people understand exactly what we're talking about. There's much work to be done if, in fact, the question is voted up. Where it goes, time will tell. So nothing has been decided, no structure, no nothing. This is simply about putting the question to the voters of Brattleboro.
And I would say the same thing. It's not personal, and hopefully the people on the other side don't make it personal. And I certainly don't want to be the mayor. If that was to, someone said I have a secret agenda, I certainly have no interest in being the mayor, but I have a strong interest in the mayoral form of government. And last but not least, get out and vote. Make sure you get out and vote. That's one right that you have, and you should utilize that. And early voting, I think, starts on the 12th or 13th of February. And so do your homework, and hopefully there's a high voter turnout in whatever way it goes. That'll determine our next step. So thank you for this opportunity to give our point of view. And again, it's not Dick DeGray and Dan Yates' form of government. We're going to be going to the select board, and that charter review committee would then come together with a proposal to take forward.
And just to be clear, in case somebody sees this and says, well, Dan didn't say anything, I have no intention of running for mayor. I like my job.
Thank you. Dan Yates, Dick DeGray, co-sponsors of the mayoral ballot question that will be on the town of Brattleboro's ballot on March 3rd. Thank you for joining us. And for everyone who's watching, Kevin, I, and Chris also thank you for joining this episode of the BCTV Open Studio.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.